Most founders that come onto this show have something that they're passionate about, something that really drives them. And they're also building businesses. Few have really joined the dots between the two, but my next guest has absolutely nailed that. I'm delighted to introduce to you Tessa Clarke from OLIO. Tessa, welcome to Founder Stories.
Thank you for having me.
I've just done a very quick intro because I'm excited to actually get to you and have you introduce OLIO and also talk about the other things that you're doing, because whilst you've run this business for 11 years now, you have many other interests. You're an advisor, you're a columnist, you have a big following on social. So would you mind just giving us a kind of snapshot of Tessa as you are today?
Gosh, synthesize myself in 30 seconds. That's a tough ask. Well, I would definitely first and foremost define myself as the co-founder and CEO of OLIO. And we're really on a mission to tackle the enormous problem of waste, but kind of food waste specifically in our homes and local communities. We have identified that that is truly one of the largest problems facing humanity today. It's absolutely criminal that we are throwing away perfectly good food and household items at the scale that we are and not yet doing anything about it. So that's kind of my day job. But by virtue of doing that, I have also developed a lot of interest in the role of business in society. And I'm just such a passionate believer in the concept of profit with purpose. So that has meant that I am now an ambassador for the B Corp movement. I'm also an ambassador for the Better Business Act, which we can talk about later on if of interest, which essentially is campaigning to change the rules around businesses and how they operate.
Right.
I'm also a big supporter of Stop Ecocide. And then when I get sort of struck by inspiration, I will write columns for Sifted.
Oh, yes, it's Sifted, yes.
Yeah.
I read one which was around going in from founder-led sales into having sales teams. So it was very, very relevant for me. It was just by look, the first one that I picked out. And I was like, oh, this is
talking
really,
about
really
founder mode.
Yeah, fantastic. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. But rightly so, let's talk about OLIO, because unlike a lot of founders that I speak to, this is not a startup. You've been doing this for some time. And it's interesting you just use the term, you're on a mission. So even though it's been 11 years, you still feel as though you are on this mission to make a real change. Talk me through the reasons why you decided to do that in the first place.
So the OLIO story dials right back to my childhood. I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere in North Yorkshire, and along with my two younger brothers, my parents had no qualms whatsoever with putting us to not just work, but hard work, so 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And through that upbringing, I learned just how precious food is, really. When you spend so much time working to produce it, it's absolutely anathema to you to then throw perfectly good food in the bin. I didn't think anything in particular about that. I've always hated food waste, but I then went on to pursue what could be described as a fairly classic corporate career. But it was about 11 or 12 years ago now, I was moving country, and on moving day, the removal men told me I had to throw away all of our uneaten food. And obviously the inner farmer's daughter in me was like, no way, I'm not prepared to put perfectly good food in the bin. So instead I bundled up my newborn baby and toddler, set out into the streets in the depth of winter, trying to find someone to give my food to. I failed miserably. I cried. I went back to my apartment. And then when the removal men were in another room, I smuggled the non-perishable foods into the bottom of my packing boxes. And that was the moment where I was just like, Tessa, you have just taken this anti-food waste thing just a step too far. This is ridiculous. You've become a cross-border smuggler. And at that point in time, I'd spent a decade working in the digital space. I knew there's an app for everything. And I couldn't believe there wasn't a really simple app where I could just advertise my spare food to my neighbours, and whoever wanted it could request it and pop around and pick it up. So that was the sort of light bulb moment for OLIO. But then the next thing I did along with my co-founder was to research the problem of food waste to find out if it was a problem any bigger than just my personal experience. And what we discovered absolutely blew our brains. We couldn't believe it wasn't on the front page of every newspaper. So globally, a third of all the food we produce each year gets thrown away. It's worth over $1 trillion. Alongside that, we have 800 million people who go to bed hungry every night, who could be fed on just a quarter of the food that we waste in the Western world. And as if all that weren't bad enough, we learned that food waste is absolutely devastating from an environmental perspective.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
it were to be a country, it'd be the third largest source of greenhouse gas emissions after the USA and China. And what a lot of people don't realize is that globally, food waste is responsible for 10% of all of our greenhouse gas emissions. That's more than the whole entire fashion industry, and it's 5 times the aviation industry. And then, as if all that weren't bad enough, when you look at where does food waste take place, in a country like the UK, 60% of all food waste takes place in the home. And interestingly enough, that's in contrast to supermarkets, which is where most people assume food waste takes place.
Same, yeah.
They're just 2%. So supermarkets are 2% of all food waste. Us in our homes are 60%. And that learning the size of the problem, learning where the problem was taking place, that then really galvanized Sacha and I to take the leap and to build the OLIO app so we would connect people with their neighbours so that people could give away rather than throw away their spare food and now also household items.
So that's what OLIO is then. It's a mobile app that I can upload I've got these items or this food, and somebody can just offer to take it or swapsies, and is it that?
So everything, so you will perhaps you're sort of decluttering the kids' playroom or that toiletries drawer that we've all got full of stuff gathering dust, or you're going away for the weekend, you've got some food, snap a photo, add it to the app. People living nearby get an alert, they can browse the listings, request what they want and pop round and pick it up. So we're essentially a marketplace business. It's hyper-local, it's neighbour to neighbour. And I think our sort of core insight is that no one likes wasting stuff. No one likes throwing perfectly good stuff in the bin. But the reason why we do it is because we no longer have anyone to give our spare stuff to. We're no longer connected to our local communities. And so what OLIO does is harness the power of mobile technology to reconnect you with your local communities in a way that is simple, it's safe, it's fun, and it just feels really good. It feels fantastic to give something a second life and to make a really meaningful difference to someone else. And in particular, during a cost of living crisis, it is more true than ever that what is one person's trash is another person's treasure.
And so you're solving more than one, apart from the burning problems that you just mentioned, there are some kind of ancillary problems there that are also just by default being solved by using this. I want to use this. Is this available kind of UK wide? Is this
the OLIO app is available throughout the UK and indeed globally. So globally we've had 9 million people join our community. Within the UK we've had 5 million people, and we have each month in the UK about £5 million worth of free food being given away on the app, and between £1 and £2 million worth of household items.
Right.
So, and the app is free to download, free to use. So we really encourage anyone who is looking to pick up a freebie to check out the OLIO app. And on the other side of the equation, someone who wants to declutter their home or just make sure that food is eaten, not thrown away, to take the 10 seconds that it takes to add it to the app. And one of the biggest challenges we have is that a lot of people think, well, no one will want what I've got. Like, who's going to want sort of 3 lemons or something? But the reality is there's no shortage of people who want free food or free household items. So a typical food item will be requested within 20 to 30 minutes of you adding it to the app.
Right.
And a typical household item will be requested anywhere between sort of 4 and 8 hours.
Right.
So we really, really encourage people to just take that leap of faith, just give it a go. And you'll be pleasantly surprised at how many people want your stuff.
You know what you're doing. After 11 years, we have to trust that you know this about this stuff. So if there is that skepticism around this, people need to try and trust you, because you've done the data, you've done the hard yards, and you know this works. I, for one, as soon as we finish this session, I am going to download this app, and I suggest that anybody listening to this or watching this does exactly the same thing. I think it's unbelievably great.
And word of mouth has been really powerful for us. So we have over 50,000 people joining OLIO every month here in the UK. And over half of them are joining us thanks to word of mouth. And the other half, almost all of them, are coming to us through organic channels. So we spend very, very little on marketing. And that's that sort of organic growth is something we've really invested very heavily in as a business, because it was quite clear to us early on that we'd built a product that people really, really loved.
Yeah.
We didn't have a ton of marketing budget, so we had to kind of dial into that word of mouth piece, do everything we could to make it as easy as possible. And that we've really sort of reaped the dividends of that.
Yeah. And in a second, I'd like to get into the kind of business network stuff that you do, because I'm sure that I'm guessing you've managed to link everything, and everything is kind of somewhat intertwined.
Yeah, we're a classic marketplace business that has that challenge of the cold start problem, and then how do you continually, day after day, match supply and demand.
Yeah.
So
I think you're very smart. I think you're super smart in how you've managed to create this kind of ecosystem. But before we get into this, I mean, I could talk to you about OLIO. I think we should do a separate session just on OLIO's story. But I do want to make this more about you. And already you've given me an absolute brilliant starting point, which is on the farm. And also, I suppose where I want to try and get to is at some point from having these beginnings, you have decided to take that leap into the corporate world. And I know from checking you out on LinkedIn, you're extremely well educated as well. So I'm just interested to know more about the kind of younger version of you and what that story looked like.
Yeah. So growing up on a farm, it was an amazing childhood. Yes, we had to work incredibly hard. We had no money and we had no material possessions, but we grew up outside in the countryside with animals, sort of very feral and free range. And that was incredible. I then sort of went to school and to university and then into the corporate world, and spent a lot of that time actually hiding my origins and my upbringing, because it was something that no one else could really relate to. And it's only really since I have now been on this entrepreneurial journey with OLIO that I've realized how valuable that upbringing was, and that many of the skills that I'm having to use as an entrepreneur were skills that I learned as a kid on the farm.
Right.
And so, for example, when you live on a farm, everything is going wrong always, every day. You know, you can't control the animals, you can't control the weather, the machinery always breaks down at the worst possible moment, and you never have all the perfect things at your fingertips when you need them. So let's imagine the cows are broken out of a field, you've got a hole in the fence, and you haven't got anything around you, and you've somehow by yourself got to get all those cows back through the hole, and you've got to fix that fence. So that really makes you think just in a really creative, lateral way. It makes you just very calm under pressure, makes you very resilient, and just a consummate problem solver. So I think whilst I spent a lot of time almost sort of undervaluing my childhood, my upbringing, I've realized that it was those learnings that have really helped me be the entrepreneur that I am today. And I feel really passionate because I'm sure there are so many other people who've had upbringings that might not on paper look like it set them up for a career in business or entrepreneurship, but actually they'd be surprised at how many of those kind of soft skills they've learned.
Yeah.
The challenge that I had was throughout my career, I was always I allowed sort of society to dictate what success looked like for me. So society said, I need to do well at school, then I needed to go to Cambridge, which is where I went to. Then I needed to get a job in consulting. And I sort of went off and did all of that stuff, and I did well, but it didn't really make my heart sing. And it took me quite a long time to pluck up the courage to pursue this entrepreneurial journey. And I think part of the challenge was I didn't see enough people who looked like me being entrepreneurs. And for example, now I look back and it makes me really sad that I spent 2 years at Stanford Business School in the heart of Silicon Valley, and I didn't take a single course on entrepreneurship. And it's just absolutely mad because right now I'd be taking every single course I could. But back then, there just weren't any role models, and entrepreneurship just felt like it was for someone who wasn't someone like, not from a farm girl from North Yorkshire. And that's where I feel it's really important that we do have people who are from all walks of life sharing their entrepreneurial experiences.
Yeah. You mentioned you went to, you obviously had a fantastic education. You obviously aced school because you wouldn't have got into Cambridge otherwise. You went to Cambridge, you did Stanford. And so that is textbook, like, amazing. Was that something that you decided that you wanted to pursue, or is that something that has been kind of hereditary across the family? What made you take that route?
Definitely not hereditary across the family, because So both my parents are farmers, and just from a long generation of farmers. But it was super. My mum in particular had always said that education is your passport, and she'd really kind of drummed that into me. And I asked her actually recently, sort of, why did you sort of convey that message so strongly? And she said, the minute I realized that you got a brain, it was quite clear to me that you would probably want to go elsewhere and sort of leave the farm. So she really supported that. But in terms of what I then did, because I had no exposure to anything other than farming, like being a farmer or being a farmer's wife, maybe being a vet, or maybe someone who does the contract silage or something. I didn't have any role models, so I had to then I kind of followed what society told me success looked like. So once you kind of got into the Oxbridge, and then there's the milk round and all the consultancies come round, and that's sort of the best job to get after university. So I sort of went and did that. It was only after I left consulting that I started to explore a little bit more myself. But actually, if I'm being really honest, I was a little bit lazy doing that. I just responded to headhunters reaching out to me. And on the one hand, that was fantastic. But on the other hand, it was a bit of a trap, because I am really intellectually curious, so I can find anything fascinating. So a headhunter would call me up with a role about whatever, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's so exciting. I get really interested in that. And that then meant that I did a bunch of jobs that I guess I was sort of intellectually interested in, but I wasn't actually passionate about. And that's what I love about the work that I'm now doing with OLIO. I am truly passionate about the work that I am doing, plus it's interesting, plus I get to work with great people.
And what does the business look like today in terms of kind of headcount and things like that? How have we
So today we're a team of about 40 people. We're a remote first business. We've never had an office, and
really,
even prior to COVID.
So say it's 11 years. So that's
back then.
You were innovative then.
We were, and it was no one could believe that you could possibly run a business without an office, and so it ended up becoming our dirty little secret. Sacha and I just gave up trying to persuade people that this model works really well. At our peak, we went up to a team size of just over 100 people. And now we're sort of back down at 40 people. And I have to say, both Sacha and I just feel much happier at the scale that we are right now. We don't have any ego attached to the size of our team whatsoever. We're just focused on delivery, output, delivering great product, growing the business. And we've found that today we're just able to move much faster and deliver to a much higher quality with a smaller, more streamlined team. And now that's a smaller, more streamlined team supercharged by AI.
And that's the way that a lot of businesses are going. But I suppose the key is not to go too far with that, but also keep that nice kind of blend of robots and humans essentially cohabiting in this lovely space. But I suppose if you were already very much remote first, you were already very digitally enabled, and
we were,
now you've just been able to layer on some more cool stuff, and do things faster, I suppose, without removing humans completely. And what type of people do you tend to look for when you're hiring? Because as I said, the reason why I said it in the intro, and you just confirmed it, you're now in a place where this is something that you are extremely passionate about, and it comes through in all of your content, and now speaking to you as well, I can see it's very much your life, and combine that with a really successful business as well. And I assume that the reason why it's been so successful as a business is because of your passion and your relentlessness about making this work. How does that then transpire to the team that you're trying to build around you?
Yeah, so in terms of the team, we've always recruited in quite a specific way. So the first requirement is that everyone who joins OLIO is not just mission aligned, which is what many companies look for. People are mission obsessed.
Right, love that.
So really, really high bar. And as part of the interview process, we have a way of sort of determining and giving people the space to demonstrate to us that they really are mission obsessed. And at various times in our journey, when it's been really, it's been harder to access talent, the market's been super competitive, it has been tempting to lower that bar. So for example, in 2020, 2021, when you couldn't hire a developer for love nor money, really tempting to lower that bar of mission obsession, but we deliberately didn't. And every day I'm glad, because it then creates a really consistent team dynamic. Everyone is in the same boat. Everyone is equally mission obsessed. And I think that really leads to an outstanding performance. The second thing that we do is we recruit for our company values. Now, we don't have our company values on a mug, on a mouse mat, on a poster on the wall, but cut any OLIO team member and they bleed our company values. And it's just 4 things. So they are inclusive, resourceful, caring, and ambitious. And again, everybody who joins the company, they have to do a kind of a final presentation. And at that stage, they have to demonstrate how they live up to those values using examples either from their professional life or their personal life to show us how they're inclusive, resourceful, caring, or ambitious. And if you get that mission obsession combined with the values piece, then honestly, you've solved 90% of your organizational and performance challenges.
Yeah, and the skills can come later.
Yeah.
Would you say that would be maybe your first piece of advice for this episode for founders that are building something? Or would you say that for building, say, I don't know, a recruitment tech business or whatever, something that doesn't have such a tie to social value, it's less important? Or do you think that's important for every single business and founders that are building teams around them to look for that obsession with the outcomes that they're trying to achieve and also alignment with the values?
I think if you recruit for mission obsession, then people naturally want to overperform and go above and beyond. You know, you're not having to force it out of people. You almost have to sort of push it back a little bit, and you have to be careful. The danger of that, by the way, is you have to make sure that your team doesn't burn themselves out because they are so committed to your objectives. But so yes, I think that recruiting that way can help result in sort of exceptional performance. The other thing around recruitment, the major learning that I'd share with any founder is to listen to your intuition. And if your intuition, your gut, your spidey sense puts up a red flag about someone, it doesn't matter how incredible their CV is, it doesn't matter what logos they've got on it. If your gut is saying there's something not quite right about this person for your organization, you absolutely need to listen to that. And I often see more junior team members or people who are earlier on in their career and they haven't had much experience recruiting, they tend to be overly swayed by what the CV says and they under-index on what their intuition says.
Trusting your gut as a founder, I think, is hugely important, isn't it? And listening to that and making some difficult calls based on that. And it's interesting because we have a lot of people and content that actually say, go with the data, go with the data, go with the data. But absolutely, when I think certainly when you're first starting to build a business, the wrong hire can be the death.
Yes, and I also think let's not undermine the power of your gut. Like your gut and your intuition is the original AI. It has been developed for absorbing billions of data points across your life. So it is data driven. And that's why it's really, really important not to ignore it.
I'm definitely going to steal that quote, I think. No, that's fantastic. So you have had the business for 11 years. 11 years of building anything is going to come with its ups and downs. There must be times that you've gone, hang on a minute, I was in a big old 6-figure job over here and now what's going on? Talk to us about some of that experience and maybe the darker days from a anxiety perspective. You can if you want to, but just that kind of roller coaster of building a business over such a long space of time.
Yeah, so it's an overused cliche, but it is true. The entrepreneurial journey is a roller coaster. One of the core things that Sacha and I have learned is that when you're in the trough, in the dip, in the dark days, it can be really easy just to get very depressed. Now, because we've got such a strong mission, failure has never been an option for us. Giving up we've never once contemplated it.
Really?
But nowadays we can kind of get through those dark moments because we know that some good stuff is around the corner. That's just the way the world works. And it might be in another 3 weeks or another 6 weeks, but kind of karma is real and we've just got to kind of wait it out. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you just keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome, that's madness, as Einstein told us. But if you are continually learning and experimenting, even when you go through periods where nothing is going your way, if you keep learning and experimenting, you will eventually get some wins. And over the years, I've found that actually reassuring. I just have to keep reminding myself that good stuff will come. It's just around the corner. Hang in there.
Yeah. And how have you managed to survive kind of financially, building a business from essentially a very important passion and mission, with nobody really putting their hands? I mean, I don't know whether there was a lot of investors that would invest in something like that 11 years ago, but how have you managed to retain some sort of a lifestyle throughout this period?
Yeah, I think that's something that isn't talked about often enough, actually. So Sacha and I founded OLIO when we were in our late 30s. So we had fantastic corporate careers, we had lovely salaries, we were at a really good point in our life. And then we sort of jacked all of that in for the life of entrepreneurship. And one of the things we did was we both created an Excel spreadsheet and we itemized absolutely everything in our family's expenditure. And we calculated sort of what our family's burn rate was at its very minimum. And for those early years, it was really difficult in our personal lives because we had to dramatically readjust, but our friendship group wasn't dramatically readjusting. So the number of times you would say, no, I'm sorry, we can't go on holiday, we can't go out to dinner, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do the other, is really, really difficult. And it can create tensions in your friendship group. All you can do is explain to your friends what you're doing, why you're doing it, and your true friends will sort of stick with you. But that's not a ton of fun. But something that is really important is that you must ensure, if at all humanly possible, that you do pay yourself as a founder. And thankfully, one of our very earliest investors, she was incredibly clear on this. She said, you guys need to make sure you have a salary so you are not lying awake at night worrying about money, because if you're doing that, you're not performing to your best for my investment. And I think mature investors, sophisticated investors, know and understand that. And I think too many founders underpay themselves and it's just not right. So, and then from the sort of post early days, what we've then done around our salaries is we've always kind of benchmarked. So there are people such as Sifted or Creandum who put out market data about what is expected as a salary, median salary for different roles at different stages of the business. And we found that very helpful for conversations that we've had with investors.
And I suppose you've had to have a similar spreadsheet for the business as well.
And we've had a very similar spreadsheet for the business, and we've taken an equally resourceful approach. So we've raised 5 rounds of financing for OLIO, a combination of venture capital, angels, impact investors, and it's been very, very tough as a female co-founded tech for good. No revenue then, early revenue business, as I'm sure you can imagine. People weren't lining up around the street to finance us, but we sort of got through it. And most importantly, we raised a big chunk of investment in the summer of 2021, which was at the height of the market. And there were 2 sort of key learnings we've had from that. One, raise money when you can. So we weren't planning to raise money then, but it became quite clear that we could. And every day since then, I've been eternally grateful that we sort of took the money when we could, because you never know when the market's going to turn. And the market did turn very dramatically after that. And if we hadn't have raised then, it's really doubtful whether OLIO would still have been here today.
Really?
And then the second major learning is just because you've raised the money does not mean to say you need to spend it all. Even if your investors are pressuring you to spend it to deliver the growth. And Sacha and I saw quite quickly that the market was turning in 2022. So pretty much immediately after we raised that round, and we were supposed to be scaling and growing the business, and we did start doing that, but quite quickly we saw what was happening in the broader economy. And so we cut back on all of our plans.
Batten down the hatches.
Down the hatches.
Great.
And as a result, OLIO is still here today. We're still thriving. And we sort of, live to see another day. And for businesses like ours, I think it is more important than for any other business that you just make sure you stay alive. Stay alive for when the market is growing again and really ready for you. And so being fiscally prudent is a really important skill set.
And that's a founder superpower, isn't it? Is, you know, we don't always get it right, but that's what your teams are relying on you to do, is to make those difficult
Yeah.
decisions. You know, this is coming. What do we do? And you've got to decide very quickly. You've got a pot of cash here. You may have promised 2 or 3 suppliers that you're going to do a marketing campaign or something like that. Or maybe you've got a hire that you've offered already, but they've not signed a contract yet. And you've got to make these really difficult decisions on what you do with that stack of cash when there's something coming around the corner. And it's not an easy thing to do. And sometimes it doesn't make you the most popular of people. And sometimes you maybe have to feel as though you've let people down. But I think those are the difficult decisions that we need to make the boat go faster.
Yeah, they are. And what we've learned is there is a right way to do it. So you have to take these really, really difficult decisions. But in our experience, if you take the time to really explain to people in detail. So, for example, we've had to do a couple of restructurings in the business, just absolutely a horrific experience. But we spent a lot of time explaining to the team, this is what is happening in the economy, and explaining about interest rates and inflation and how that impacts the venture capital market, and therefore how that impacts us. And therefore, this is the decision we've taken and why. And if you take the time to really respectfully step out your logic and your rationale, and also provide people with the information that they can then take home and explain to their other halves. Because I've always thought, you know, at the end of the day, someone has to explain to their friends and their family what has happened and why. And if you equip them with that knowledge and information, then we found that really helps people through the process.
Yeah.
And then also we've always tried to go above and beyond for everyone who is exiting the business to make sure we do it on the, you know, with the most notice possible and the best possible way. And we provide them with a lot of career support post leaving the company. And even though we're really, really small, we pull out all the stops to make that happen. And I think that's really important because everyone else who's staying sees how you treat the people who are leaving.
Definitely. Happy leavers. I think that's another nugget of brilliance there for founders, that you're not always going to be able to keep everybody. Things happen, markets change, etc. It's not what you do that matters, it's how you do it. That's what sticks in people's minds. No one in 20 years' time is going to resent an employer for making them redundant. They may feel it smarts a bit when it first happens, but no one's still bitter about that 20 years later. But if it was done really badly and they were just kicked out of the door with no explanation as to why, then that can really stick with people for a lifetime. And as you've rightly said, affect their confidence and their chances to then move on to something that could potentially be even better. That next opportunity could be just around the corner. So setting them up in the best possible way with that, with lots of information around the why, lots of support, I think is what we owe to all of our people, whether they were the right person for our business or not. Really.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that's been really nice to see and reassuring to see is, without exception, every single person who has ended up leaving the business for whatever reason, and sometimes they've been more difficult exits than others, for example, early founding team members, but without exception, everyone has ended up in a better, happier place that works for them. And having now sort of seen this movie a couple of times as a founder, it is reassuring to know that you will get there eventually.
Yeah. I think this is why people can really hang their hat on what you're saying, because you're not saying this from a podcast that you watched once, or, you know, it's not your first
rodeo.
I don't like to use the phrase "you've been around the block" a few times, but you know what I mean. And you've been in this business long enough now to see these waves happen, to see, you know, market crisis, to see recessions and wars and all of the rest of it. And you know that probably the reason why you said earlier, you know, you're a big believer in like the karma thing, because actually it's a bit of a cliche, but usually everything will be all right in the end, as long as you do the right things and you treat people kindly and fairly, which is probably why your values have come out in the way that they have. So I think people can actually really trust in your views there and create similar environments for the people that they work with.
And that's why our caring value is so powerful. So again, it's not on a mug, it's not on a mouse mat, but we have used that as the touchstone throughout these really, really difficult times. And we'll say to ourselves, are we behaving in a caring way? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And when you really live your values like that, it's very powerful.
Tessa, I can't move on without asking about Sacha. And the reason why is because you have referred to we in every single example that you've given so far, or Sacha and I. Not once have you said me or I in this whole conversation about OLIO. So I think it would be rude almost to not talk about Sacha and how you two met and how that's kind of played out.
Yeah, I'm smiling because Sacha and I are almost like these sort of identical twins, to the extent that whenever we go places, the number of times people get confused thinking they've met me when really they met Sacha, and sort of vice versa. So we really are a package that comes together. And I would say our relationship is one of the greatest strengths of the company. And I think that our team would say that as well. So Sacha and I met, actually we've agreed to stop counting how many years ago, but let's say over 2 decades ago, when we were at business school. And then when we graduated, we both came back to London. We were sort of in our early 30s or late 20s, early 30s. We were single, girls about town, and we had a lot of fun. Then coincidentally, we had our first children at the same time. Really? And so we did a little project together when we were on our first maternity leave. And then it was really then through the co-founding of OLIO together that our relationship has just really cemented and blossomed. And I think there are a couple of key ingredients that have made that relationship work. So the first one is we are both mission obsessed. We both embody those very same values. We think we both have a very similar kind of just outset and outlook on life. We have a similar level of ambition and pragmatism, and that mix of those two things. But also we did a couple of things really early on that I think set our relationship up for success. So the first one was, I can remember, I think it was sort of the day we founded the company and set it up on Company's House. We were sat on the floor together and we said, right, let's list out the 10 or 12 functions that exist in any company, and we're going to divide these functions up between the two of us, which clearly felt ridiculous, saying, right, I'll take HR and I'll take finance and I'll take marketing, when it was just the two of us. But it was a really, really important process to go through, because we then had really clear areas of responsibility. And we said, how we'll operate is we've got our own domains. We're empowered to run with those. But if we're taking any major strategic or significant decisions, we commit to cross-reference to one another. And that setup has taken us through over a decade, and actually we still have those same sort of functional oversights. The only one that's changed a little bit, has flipped between us, is marketing and the different bits of marketing. So sort of PR and performance marketing and brand have sometimes moved around between the two of us, but everything else has remained sort of unchanged. And today we broadly characterize it that I'm the CEO and responsible for the build half of the business, so everything to do with product and design and customer support and stuff like that, and analytics, and then and people and culture. So I kind of build everything, and then she's responsible for go-to-market, so building our networks, our sales, etc.
Okay.
So that was one thing, having very clear division of responsibility. So we never stepped on each other's toes, and we never got frustrated.
Another great tip.
And then the second thing that we did was we made a commitment to one another that our friendship would be more important than the business. And so that therefore meant that we could never afford to fall out, because we both committed to maintaining our friendship. And a little sort of mental device that we've both used is, I don't know if you remember those sort of pressure cookers, and they've got that little thing, the gauge, and sort of when the pressure's getting too much, it goes up. And we both agreed that if we felt anything more than 5% sort of stressed out or pissed off at each other, we would raise it. And so what that has meant is that we've just got a very kind of little and often communication style with one another. And in the early days, when we were learning how to work with each other, we had quite a lot of those conversations. Nowadays, we're telepathic. So we don't often have those conversations. But I can genuinely say that in over a decade of working together very intensely through thick and thin, ups and downs, we have not once had a falling out or an argument. We've had plenty of discussions, plenty of debates, but it's just such a powerful relationship.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'd love to meet Sacha. She's awesome. She sounds great. And I would love to get you both back on. We had I've had co-founders on as a double act before, and I think the kind of dividing up duties and responsibilities often comes a little bit later, but it's such a great shout to do that early on, because then you go, sometimes you grow and you grow and you grow and you grow, and you look back and you've grown so much that then you're trying to do that, like while the train's coming down the track, essentially you're trying to kind of build the track. But by setting that out early, I suppose that's been
Yeah,
really
and the
helpful.
other thing that we did, when you're sort of dividing up those functions, it can be hard to know how to do it. And what we agreed is that now is not the time for us to say, oh, I quite fancy having a go at that. We need to give the function to the person who haven't necessarily got experience of it, a ton of experience of it, but they are more predisposed towards it. Their capabilities would naturally take them towards that area.
Yeah,
and I think that was
cool.
really helpful as well.
Yeah. And then that obviously gives you reporting lines naturally, just
of course,
out of the box. Brilliant. And let's talk a little bit about the other things that are going on in your world. So your day job, as you put it, rightly so, is OLIO. But you've built up a really interesting kind of portfolio around that. So you are involved in Small Business Forum, you do advisory work, I think you've done some investments, so you've kind of really built up quite an interesting so outside of the day job, shall we say. So tell us a little bit about what's going on and how that might aid OLIO in a way.
Yeah, so in the early years, I was definitely 120% sort of OLIO focused. That's exactly, that was the only thing that I did. But over the years, one of the things that Sacha and I learned was that a very powerful way of accelerating our sales cycle was if we as founders would speak at events. And so we've both had to learn how to speak publicly. It's not something we necessarily loved doing, but we recognized that it came with the territory. And if you're at an event speaking on the stage, then instead of you sort of trying to desperately speak to someone, they actually come up and speak to you afterwards. And through contributing to your industry more broadly through working groups and stuff like that, you can often get yourself in a room behind closed doors and you are having C-level conversations that you would otherwise never dream of being able to have. So there's quite a sort of blurring of the lines of what you're doing out of your own personal interest, but also what really accelerates your business. They're one and the same thing. And some of the areas that I've really ended up focusing on have been the whole area and concept of profit with purpose. So kind of the B Corp movement, the Better Business Act, Stop Ecocide. These are things that, I studied social and political sciences, undergrad. I'm really interested in systems and how they work. And I can see very clearly how our current systems and current forms of capitalism are starting to feel pretty broken. And one of a real learning that I've had is that actually, if you just reach out to some of these organizations and just be very proactive and start promoting them or start spreading the word on their behalf, even necessarily without them asking you, they will then come and approach you, and then you can start talking about formalizing a role. Then they will start creating media opportunities for you, which gives you an opportunity to talk about your business. So it's amazing how you can create roles and opportunities for yourself outside of your business, but adjacent to what you're doing, just by being super proactive.
Yeah. It's another great tip from a go-to-market perspective as well, because you have to make a lot of calls. If you just got someone sat in a cupboard with a phone book and a phone, but you found other ways of getting in front of people and not necessarily trying to sell to them, just creating awareness, creating a brand. And interest and having people come to you, I think can be applied to most businesses in terms of their kind of go-to-market strategy and how they keep the lights on. I think many don't do it, and I think it's partly easier sometimes just hire a salesperson and have that kind of revolving door of, and others don't really know how to actually do that and get involved in that.
Yeah, I think an important tip if you're going to follow this sort of strategy is to play it for the long game. So you must resist the temptation when you've been given an opportunity to speak, not to be partisan, not to be a salesperson, not just to bang the drum about your business. You need to, so anytime I'm on a panel, I work really hard to make sure that I add the most value of anyone on that panel, and I make sure that I've got that provocative perspective, those powerful sound bites. And then when you add value, people add you, invite you back again. People want to talk to you about your perspective. And then the business opportunity can then flow very naturally and very organically after that. So you've just got to be a little bit patient and avoid the temptation to go into kind of sales mode for your organization too early.
100%. I learned that one the hard way quite early on. But we had a guy on the podcast, actually. He was very, very interesting. And he is, his job is a super connector.
Wow.
And so he attends kind of 20 networking events a week. And just,
I feel exhausted just thinking about that.
Exhausting, right? But that's his job, and he meets people at events, and then thinks about somebody else who he can meet at another event, and he connects them, and that's his thing. And he's building an app which is able to do that for him, which is really interesting. And I asked him for his, as a professional networker, I asked him for his tips, and he completely agreed with you. This is number one: is never ever sell at a networking event, because you are, even if you do a deal on that day, that's just one and done. What we're trying to do is build awareness and add value, as you say. Which for me is go-to-market 101. It's like value, 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 value. Maybe then sell. Maybe a bit more value first. So I love that, and tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing with these organisations outside of OLIO, the kind of the day-to-day. How much are you involved?
So for the B Corp movement, OLIO wasn't a B Corp initially, actually, because we were a very small business. We knew that what we were doing was having a positive impact on people and planet, and we just didn't have the resources to apply and get the certification. Then after a couple of years, it became really clear to us that we would benefit from having that certification, from being part of that network. And so we invested in that. And today I am a spokesperson for the B Corp movement. They gave me some media trading very kindly earlier on this week. So that's great. I think the B Corp movement is fantastic. The Better Business Act is a campaign that's being run by the B Corp movement. And what it is doing is campaigning specifically to change about 10 or 12 words in Section 172 of the Companies Act. Because at the moment, most people's reading of the Companies Act is that it is your responsibility as a director of a company to maximize profits above all else.
Right.
And the Better Business Act is campaigning to change that wording to make it clear that as a director of a company, your responsibility is to give equal weight in your decision making to people and to planet and to profit. And I think this has the potential to be absolutely game changing to the contribution and to the role that business plays in society, because at the moment we have a very linear, extractive, wasteful, polluting model of business that is taking us to a point where we've exceeded 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries. If you take the health of us as a population, we are chronically sick and ill and obese, and much of that is because businesses have focused on profit maximization above all else. And so if we can change the rules of the game for business, the definition of success for business, then I think that's one of the most powerful things we can do to change the trajectory of our society and to improve the well-being of all of us. And then the third one is Stop Ecocide. And essentially that group is campaigning to make the widespread and severe destruction of nature a crime, and to make it any company director personally, legally, criminally liable for if their company undertakes ecocide. And I spent a brief period, which I didn't enjoy, working in financial services, where there are similar things that you must not do. And if your company does do it, then you face jail time as a director. And I saw up close how the fear of jail time really does change and influence how people take decisions.
Yeah.
So I think Stop Ecocide, if that were to be rolled out, that would very quickly help solve our deforestation challenges, for example, or the pollution that happens out of the fashion and textiles industry.
Yeah.
So I'm really passionate about these sort of initiatives that I always think of that saying, sort of, give me a lever and a place to stand and I'll move the world.
Yeah.
Stop Ecocide and the Better Business Act are really fantastic examples of that. And that's why I'm really passionate about them.
Oh, I'm so glad I got to hear about them. And the Ecocide one, yeah, you're absolutely right. If you put a penalty like that, then all of a sudden, you know, you've got CEOs going into HR and saying, right, okay, we need to look at our whole thing. You know, it's very it's sad, isn't it, that it takes that to get people to actually.
It is
look,
sad, but that is the reality. That's reality of where we are,
yeah.
and I definitely encourage anyone who's listening to this. You can sign up and sign your business to be a signatory to the Better Business Act. So there's over 3,000 organisations, large and small, in the UK who are pushing and campaigning for that. And I'd also encourage you to consider, becoming a B Corp and going through the certification process, because that very process of assessing your company and your operations and your policies and your processes and your strategy across the 7 core sort of impact areas that they measure is a really, really valuable process. And actually the B Corp data has shown that last year, for example, B Corps grew their turnover by 20%, which is 7 times higher than equivalent SMEs. So sound business is good business.
I completely agree, because I apologise, but the salesperson in me and the go-to-market person in me, when you were talking about B Corp, straight away, I know that it's a fantastic tool that you can, and that just, I think people are more inclined to buy from a company that has invested so heavily, not just in holidays for the CEO, but in something that's actually making a difference. I think, yes, it's a good thing to do, but it can also be a fantastic growth engine for the business. And we've seen that again and again. We're seeing recruitment companies now.
Yeah, and so B Corps last year saw an 11% increase in headcount versus 2% for regular companies. So, and through COVID, 93% of B Corps survived, in comparison to, I think it was 84% of non-B Corps. Right. So being a B Corp makes your business more resilient and higher growth. And what CEO would not want that? And
you can go to bed at night knowing you're doing something half decent. Yeah. So, a win-win for everybody there. So I think that's great. Before we start to kind of close this out, I am really curious, and you can tell me to mind my own business if you like, but I'd love to get just a snapshot into your life now, because you've obviously very, very passionate about the kind of food waste thing. You've obviously got a background that I assume that you are really into food, and that you have this. So I've just got this vision of you kind of outside of work, and I'd love just to learn a little bit more about Tessa outside of work and the things you do with your time, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm not prying too much.
No, not at all. So I've been on a massive journey there as well. I think one of the most important things that has enabled, I feel super fulfilled, super happy. I love my life. I'm very, very fortunate. One of the key things that has enabled me to get to this place is I read right at the beginning of OLIO's journey a book called The Lean Startup, which I'm sure many of your audience have already read. Yeah. And I've really applied the Lean Startup mentality to my own personal life as well. So I'm constantly testing and experimenting to see what works, to see what makes me happy, to see what works for my family. From the very earliest days, as I mentioned, we've been a remote first business. So what that means is that I've been able to work from home. And as a result, I've been fully present in the upbringing of my kids, who today are 11 and 13. So they really have grown up from being a baby and a toddler alongside the business. I come to London almost every week for a day or two. And so I'm very fortunate that my husband is happy to kind of hold the fort when I'm away for those couple of days. And then I have had a major transition from feeling guilty about doing anything for myself during sort of the working hours to now religiously carving out and protecting after the school run and before 10 a.m. in the morning as my time. And that is when I do some form of exercise, which might be a Pilates class, it might be working out with a personal trainer, it might be going for a run, doing my own weight session. And that just sets my day up with super high energy. I feel like I'm winning already because I've already had a workout. And that's also when I have my sort of best quality thinking. So when I'm sort of working out or going for a walk or a run, I listen to podcasts obsessively. So I learn a lot. I get a ton of inspiration. I have all my breakthrough thinking or my creative thinking. So that's really effective. And then the other thing I've been doing in my life, and a small shameless plug coming up here, is that over the last 8 years, I've been trying to live in my personal life in a way that's more consistent with what I'm doing through my work at OLIO. So I started to feel like a total fraud about sort of 2 years into the OLIO journey, because I was like, oh my goodness, I'm out banging the drum all day long, every day about the climate crisis and just how bad things are on a trajectory to be. And yet when I look in my personal life, I was sort of consuming like crazy and just living a very, very unsustainable life. And so I started a process of just lots and lots of simple swaps, swapping everything from my sort of toothbrush through to my washing up liquid, through to my mobile phone that I use, through to my bank account, how I travel, how we cook as a family, how we eat as a family, absolutely everything. And I've just finished turning that into a book, which has a working title, Simple Swaps. And it's just hundreds and hundreds of those simple swaps, sort of almost spoon-fed to people so they can, because I'm a bit anal. I've done all of the research, all of the trial and experimentation. I appreciate that most people don't have the time for that. My major learning from all of this is that actually living more sustainably makes you healthier, wealthier, and happier. So it is not about compromise and depriving yourself. And I've also learned that if you take care of yourself, then the planet will take care of itself. And so as a result of living in this way, I'm just generally a lot happier, a lot more fulfilled, a lot healthier. So is my family. And I can go to bed at night sleeping pretty well because I know that I'm doing my best. I'm not perfect, far from it. But I am kind of doing my best to try and ensure that we have a livable world for our kids.
And your kids are 11 and 13?
Yeah.
How have they handled potentially being different from their lifestyle than their friends who are just chucking stuff away all over the place and got loads of screens and lights on and everything else? Have they handled that okay?
They have, because it is back to giving people the why. So I've always sort of treated my kids with a lot of respect and explained the why to them from when they were, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're more than capable of understanding this. And the other thing actually about kids is that intuitively they dislike waste, and they themselves actually sort of, it's obvious to them that you wouldn't pollute something or throw something away, and it's only our modern society that sort of trains that out of them. So what I'm doing is just helping them maintain that sense of conviction in themselves that this is the right way to lead their lives. It's not easy, of course. They come under peer group pressure, but yeah, I think they get it.
And they're probably mission obsessed.
Yes, I guess it's sort of, it comes,
you've got the values running through
it comes with the territory.
Yeah, they've been real part of the journey. I always think your team isn't just limited to office walls, particularly as a working parent. You've got to kind of hike your kids up and bring them along on the journey. And the kids have done a lot of flyering with me, I will say, especially in the early days. It's probably done them the world of good. They probably love the business. My kids love my business. They really love it. They really are kind of the extension of your team, right? And if anyone gets your mission, it's going to be your family. So I don't think I was too far off with my vision of what home life would look for you now. And it takes us beautifully into what's next. So what are your kind of hopes and dreams, and what do you hope for yourself and for OLIO moving forward?
Well, obviously we have enormous ambition and vision that it remains undimmed. Sacha and I are so frustrated that whilst we are really proud of what we've achieved, the reality is, honestly, we're doing a rounding error of our full potential, and we're super agitated that we're not doing a lot more, that we're not working with many more businesses, that we haven't got instead of a handful of millions of people using OLIO, we should have hundreds of millions of people using OLIO. So we've still got a really, really long way to go, and we're not going to give up on that. So we've got a very clear vision of sort of the end goal, which will take a long time to get to. And we don't spend much time worrying about the middle bit. Then the stuff that we're immediately excited about over the next, let's say, sort of 6 months, is that we are in the process of building a service that will enable any event organizer or venue or catering company to either book in advance or book on demand an OLIO volunteer to come to that event, pick up all of the unserved food, take it home, add it to the app, and make sure that food is eaten by the local community. And there are roughly 1 million corporate events that take place in the UK each year, all of which are throwing away a crazy amount of absolutely delicious,
take it with them, do they?
Catered food that should be being redistributed into the local communities. So that's what's getting me very excited. So I'm busy doing lots of research and discovery, speaking to events organisers, venues, caterers to make sure that we're building a product that they would like. And then we're sort of pretty early days of international expansion. So we've got some pilots going on with either going on or about to go on with large grocery retailers in Singapore and also in the UAE. And we've got conversations sort of rumbling along in a number of other markets. And then
I think you were going to say the Nordics or Sweden or something, maybe because I just thought they'd have more of a, they're quite socially responsible.
Yeah, they are. We've got, I saw a lovely LinkedIn post the other day actually from someone who is in Amsterdam who is busy using Olio and loving it.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, we've had items successfully shared in over 60 countries so far. And that's happening very organically, as I mentioned before, through the whole sort of word of mouth thing.
It's kind of massive and tiny all at the same time, isn't it? Because the opportunity is endless. Yeah. And you've got such a huge following already, but then in the grand scheme of things, I now know why you refer to it as a mission. Yeah. Very few founders after 11 years would describe their business as being on a mission. Yeah. But you've chosen something which is going to take a long time.
It is, because what we're trying to do is drive systems change and behaviour change, and I've learned the hard way that takes decades, not years.
Yeah, yeah, and your kids will be fine. Your kids will be in years and years and years to come. They'll still be doing things in the system and process that you've created because that's how they've always done it. But you're unpicking lots and lots of terrible habits and just what people, they don't know any different. Kids will not finish their dinner and they'll just they'll open their lunchbox and go, oh, I didn't want that. Yeah. And that's just the world that we live in. So I'm super excited for you on this mission. But I do think that you've chosen something that is probably evergreen and is never going to be finished. Yeah. And what about for you personally? I know the two with Olio, they come hand
honestly
in hand.
they are so inextricably linked. Yeah. I guess sort of the book is my big sort of personal project right now. Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of work to do to figure out how do we develop the go-to-market strategy for that, to make sure that as many people as possible buy or read the book, and more importantly that, not just read it, but actually then start to take some of those simple swaps in their lives, because I'm just such a firm believer in the fact that it was billions of small actions that caused the climate crisis in the first place. So by the very same logic, billions of small actions can help get us out of it. And I think one of the biggest lies we've all been told, that we believe at the moment, is that what we do doesn't count. Yeah. And that just couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah. I think teenagers have got a great outlook largely on things like climate change and responsibility, and often are educating their parents to do better, which is absolutely amazing to see. We're all too quickly to come down hard on kids, but actually they care about this stuff much more than the average adult. So I can imagine my 16 and 17-year-old buying that book and bringing that home and putting it on the table and saying, right, okay, let's divvy these things up. Who's doing what? Like, who's going to get what? I will definitely buy it, because I think that we are oversold products and things, and we're told that it's an easy throwaway line to say, oh, this is better for the environment. You mentioned toothbrushes. I'm a bit obsessed with teeth, and so I'm constantly getting retargeted.
That's an interesting obsession.
Yeah. I'm always looking for like the best toothpaste and things. So I'm constantly getting targeted with like, this is better for the environment, etc. But ultimately, you don't know for sure. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to educating myself with your book. When is it coming out?
So it should be at the beginning of next year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we'll see that on Amazon.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do is, when we finished our session, I'm going to make a diary note to contact you very kind of between now and then, kind of halfway point,
Yeah.
and get some actual dates and data so that we at the
bless you,
engine
thank
and
you.
all of our network can make sure that everybody buys it. I'm sure it's going
Thank
to be
you.
super useful.
It will be. It aims to be really
Small
full
changes.
of practical
Yeah.
advice. And also, and it's not, even though I started off being motivated about the planet, actually, a lot of it leads with health. So if you're talking about teeth,
Yeah.
most dental floss is covered in forever chemicals.
Yes.
That
yeah.
you are, and plastics that you are putting in between your teeth and in direct contact with your gums. You know, that's and in a horrible, nasty plastic little case. Or you can do a simple swap to a super cute little stainless steel reusable container that has a plastic-free, forever chemical-free tooth floss inside it. Like, why wouldn't
Why
you
would
want
you
to
not
do
just
that? You know, and that's better for you. It's better for the planet.
Yeah, you're putting it inside your mouth.
Your bathroom looks nicer.
Yeah,
You know, it's just a
absolutely.
win
I
on
actually
every
thought
level.
when you said it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that would go nicely with the bathroom. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a really useful resource for people. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
It's going to be fantastic. I've absolutely loved talking to you today. I feel like I could talk to you for forever and ever. How can people get in touch with you if they want to know more?
So probably the first thing I'd say to everyone is please download the OLIO app.
Of course.
Google Play,
of
App
course.
Store. If you want to find out more about us, we are at OLIO app on socials. At olioapp.com is our website. And then I'm Tessa Clarke on LinkedIn.
I think it would be really useful for people to reach out to you and talk to you. And it's just occurred to me that it's David Attenborough's 100th birthday.
It is, and here's a nice story. We are redistributing the surplus food from his birthday party.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like I've kind of honoured his 100th birthday by having you on the podcast. So this is dedicated to David,
absolutely,
who is obviously the best person in the world.
Absolute
but I
legend,
love what you're doing, Tessa. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us about it, and I wish you every success with it.
Perfect. Thank you.